Hey there guys, it's me TheTacticalBrit, and the recent roadmap has been released for Battlefield 5 that will explain content that's coming to the game up until around about fall, so we're looking around about October, November, and today I want to look at that content and give you guys my opinion. Now I think it's worth noting that these aren't expressly the opinions of the community, they're just some thoughts and feelings from myself, nor do I particularly claim to represent entire cross-sections of the community. These are just things that I think, so feel free to disagree with me in places and, let's get a discussion going about this. So naturally this all kicks off with Battlefield 5 Firestorm, which is releasing on the 25th of March, with the actual chapter Trial by Fire releasing on the 28th of March later. Now it's only a 3-day gap and it's pretty good. I think lots of people are going to be sinking their teeth into Firestorm, but I think what's important about this is that we identify a lot around the fact that there are some players who just simply aren't interested in Royale, they aren't interested in BR games, and they're interested in Battlefield specifically. Now, the next one in April is new combined arms stuff. I'll be honest with you, I don't see the point in this. It seems like a waste of time and effort, it seems like a waste of resources. I'm sure there are some people who play co-op, I'm sure there are some people who might like it. But ultimately, and again, this is just my opinion, I don't believe a vast majority of the community actually care about co-op in any shape or form. It was severely under-delivered, it doesn't look like it's worth playing, and I don't understand why they're committing resources to it. In May we have the new map, which is Mercury, which is the Crete map that we've been promised from Greece. Now this is based on Operation Mercury, which was one of the largest airborne invasions of Greece. It looks like it's got a really cool premise, and just from the small snapshot that we see there, it looks like it's really going to offer some variety of gameplay, which is quite exciting. Some new theatres, some new differences, some new graphics, it's all going to be pretty damn good. But ultimately, the fact that this is arriving in May is actually seriously disappointing. Now, this is the only new map we've had since Panzerstorm, and Panzerstorm didn't even hit the mark for most people, and we played it over in Sweden at the launch event. It didn't really feel like a map that was new, it felt like a base game map anyway. And ultimately, the first ever map since May, like, that's a big old stretch of time, and I think this is kind of a kick in the teeth for the community, because ultimately, we said that this would be starting in March. The map was starting in March. We were supposed to get this starting in March. That was the exact terminology used. And although it says obviously starting, meaning that it will last for a while, the fact that we're not seeing a brand new map until May is really frustrating. Though I do appreciate the fact that, for developers it is hard to develop a map, I read something that recently Devastation actually took around 12 to 13 months alone to make. I'm not trying to discredit any of the guys at DICE, I'm not trying to say what they're doing is wrong or their work ethic is bad or anything. I'm just simply saying that, in my opinion, having one map released up until May is really not that great, and I think it's something that's upsetting the community, and ultimately it's quite difficult. Now, as a community that's gone from multiple maps with DLC to one map up until May, it's always going to be a downhill battle in my opinion. Premium by all means was a terrible system and didn't work, and I will happily say that I advocated for Premium to be gotten rid of, but I think there hasn't been a middle ground achieved here, and only having one map by May is simply unacceptable. Moving on in June, we have a new mode called Outpost. It's quite vague around what this is actually going to be, but it says something along the lines of capturing objectives to make sure you have enough reinforcements to take on the next battle. And it says something along the lines of resources as well, so you're going to be fighting for resources. This looks like some kind of point defense mode, kind of like Hardpoint, I'd guess, in like Call of Duty, except you have, the ability to build defenses and stuff like that. So that could be really interesting, and I'm excited to see what happens with that. Now, it's also worth mentioning as well that in April, duos will come to Firestorm for a limited time only. I really don't understand the logic behind this. If duos is available, and it looks like it is, just put it in at launch. Like, solos and squads are great, but people want to play I want to play duos. I know lots of people do as well, and I don't understand why it should only appear in Firestorm for a limited amount of time. Now, alongside all of this, up until the end of June or June-ish, we will have weekly rewards as well as 6 weapons. Apparently some of the DICE devs have gone on to say that there will actually be multiple more weapons, not necessarily just from March to June, but onwards as well. It isn't a fixed number, 6 so to speak. There will be more, and they're going to scatter them around as much as they can, which is really promising and quite exciting. I personally don't really use the weekly rewards, but I know there are lots of people that do. Starting in June, we have Defying the Odds, which is Chapter 4, and that's going to be running all the way up until fall, so that could be anywhere between sort of September to November, and this features a new maps and mode selection, A new map being one called Marita, which looks like a sort of cliffside battle. I'm pretty sure this refers to another battle that happened in Greece in World War II that was in Marita. And there also is an urban combat map, as well as an up close and personal 5v5 mode. And this 5v5 mode sounds incredibly extensive, and I'm going to read out some of the stuff that has been data mined from Battlefield. Now, of course, most of this won't make the game, some of it won't be final, but I think it's worth reading anyway. So apparently this 5v5 mode will feature something called doctrines, and a doctrine for a squad are basically special forces elements from the World War II era that will determine what kind of people you have available in classes and what bonuses will be available from you. There is the SAS, the Army Rangers from the United States, the Devil Brigade from US/Canada, 2 German factions, as well as an Italian faction called Decima Mass. And I think this is incredibly interesting because it points at the United States and Italians being added to Battlefield 5 by the time that this mode launches. Now, of course, none of this is specifically confirmed, but it does appear that that will be the case. Now, the doctrine confirmation is done by other squad members, and the squad can confirm the doctrine or select a new one with a majority vote. So there are 3 bonuses for your squad, maybe 4 potentially. There's bipod expertise, which says that bipods can be deployed whilst crouching. There is a recon plane that spots enemies. There is faster health regeneration that heals to full. And there is blast armor that reduces explosive damage by 33%. There's also other things like increased throwables, expert tracking, such as spotted enemies remaining for longer, more ammunition, faster building of fortifications. There's also some last things like last living squad members gaining the ability to squad revive regardless of chosen kit, supply drops of ammunition, squad deploy, artillery strikes, and vehicle incendiary equipment. Now, this all seems incredibly interesting. There are some logos as well that has been included in this data mining. There are a plethora of classes from captains, assault, medic, support, and recon. Some of them, for example, are like the infiltrator, tactician, grenadier, gunner, trauma surgeon, as well as stuff like raid captain and control captain. These are some of sort of the things we've seen in stuff like incursions, but it really does look insane. It looks like this is incredibly well thought out mode. It looks like it's got lots of content coming to it, and again, it does point at the United States and Italians being added to the game. Now, I do want to specify this is all data mined information. The announcement itself of this new map and mode coming to the game is already confirmed, but what you're reading here is data mined information that may or may not make it to the final game. And then finally, in fall 2019, we have Chapter 5, which is Awakening the Giant, an all-out invasion in a new theatre of war. Now, I'm happy to say that this does look like the Pacific Front, and there are 2 reasons for that. Awakening the Giant actually refers to a general from the Japanese army who said that we fear that we've awakened the giant, which was referring to the Pearl Harbor bombings and talking about the United States entering the war, which is naturally the giant of the war. And it also, in the actual cover photo that you're seeing there that's been blurred out, is actually a segment of concept art from the art book that lots of us have that was sent to us from EA. And it's actually concept art from the Pacific Theatre. So it looks like they're actually going to be committing to that, which is pretty damn cool. Now, alongside that, I think there are some questionable decisions here. There are no new theatres of war until fall 2019. Duos is a limited time only, and for some reason, hardcore mode is only coming to combined arms, and there's also no new map till May. Now, I've got to say, whilst I do think the roadmap will be fine for players that will be playing Battle Royale quite extensively, if you're not interested in that, and there is an acknowledgement that there is a section of the community that won't be interested, and I totally respect that, I personally will play it, but I know that there are people who won't. I really think this is a kick in the teeth, and I really think it's quite disappointing in some places that we won't see a new map till May, we won't see lots of content, we won't see, you know, what appears to be commitment to things like co-op modes, which I think most people universally don't really want. It's just a bit mad, and I honestly think, like, you know, it felt as though DICE were holding back between sort of the release date and now. It felt like they were holding back content, and it felt like, I think to most of the community, that there was a lot more coming, and there was a lot of anticipation around this roadmap, and I think a lot of that has actually been really dumbed down by what we've seen here. I think the new Theatre of War is going to be fantastic. I think some of the new maps will be fantastic. I know the 5v5 mode, for some people, it's going to look like, oh, they're shoehorning in a 5v5 mode, they're wasting time and effort. But for a cross-section of the competitive community, that is incredibly important, and I understand that too. There is currently no mention of RSP, which is a little bit disappointing. Hopefully we hear something about that. And I just think, again, if you're playing Firestorm, this is going to be fine for you, but if you're not, I think the fact that there's just a severe lack of content up until May, the fact that, you know, even after May, there is going to be a gap once we get the next few maps, then there's going to be a huge gap until the Theatre of War in fall, which could be anywhere until October, November. So ultimately, it's a mixed bag, mixed reactions, I'd say, is where I'm coming from here. And again, none of this is to discredit the guys at DICE, none of this is to discredit all the work that they're doing. You know, it simply isn't the fault of some of the developers that I see get a lot of flack on social media. You know, they are working hard and they're working to create the content that we want, and they are listening to us too. But ultimately, you know, they can only do so much. I think a lot of the sort of commitments to Tides of War and stuff like that actually comes at a much more managerial level, a much more financially toned level, and I really think it's quite difficult for us to understand on the ground how some of these decisions are made. Although with the introduction of things like 5v5 modes, hopefully RSP at some point, as well as the Pacific Theatre of War, we can at least say that these guys have been listening to us very intently as it is to what we want. Co-op is probably the only exception to that. As always, troops, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in another video.